Let's go. We are back with a good friend of mine. I'm so excited for you guys to hear about this because we're going to be talking about the legal side of business. But I don't want you to just stop listening right now because you hear legal side. You're like, oh shit, I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing, or it stresses me out. We're going to make the legal side of things fun today. Okay. And my guest today is a good friend of mine, Andrea Sager, the CEO and founder of Legalpreneur. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So I just want to jump straight in, okay? You built something special. It's incredible, helping entrepreneurs do the legal side. You have a book called Legalpreneur. You have a business called Legalpreneur. What is Legalpreneur?
So many people aren't sure what legalpreneur is. Like, is this for attorneys? Is this for business owners? Like, what is this? And it is for both. But for the business owner side, Legalpreneur is your one-stop shop to get all the legal protection you need for your business. I created this as a spinoff from my law firm. I realized very quickly I had more clients than I wanted to serve in my law firm. And at the same time, I had attorneys coming to me asking, hey, can you mentor me? Can you coach me? And I did not have the capacity when I had my law firm. But now Legalpreneur provides like all the DIY do-it-yourself resources. And we have our Legalpreneur membership, which gets you all access to your own attorney. We connect you with the attorney after they have been trained by Legalpreneur. And I get to be the middleman for everybody.
So you're telling me entrepreneurs, business owners can work with you guys and you just pair them up with people so that all their legal questions can get answered, but they don't have to spend full on retainers like you
Yeah.
normally would.
Exactly. Yeah. And so our Legalpreneur membership, you get all access to your own attorney, and we still provide you with tons of resources. We start you with a business audit, a trademark search. We get you like literally everything that you need, because there's so many questions you have when you start a business. It's like, I don't even know where to start. And we get your LLC done. Basically, it's just your one-stop shop to make sure that you are legally compliant, and we make it, I dare I say, not fun, maybe not exactly fun, but it's not scary to where you just keep ignoring it and putting it on the back burner, because the fear is most people fear legal being scary and expensive. But the thing is, it's only scary and expensive when you put it off until there's an issue. That's when it's 100 times more money. It is 100 times more headaches, and that's when it's scary. And it's like, oh my gosh, why did I even start this business? But if you just do a little bit of work up front, tackle all the legal issues head on, you don't have to worry about any of it.
That's so good. That's so good. I want to, you said a lot of people have the fear of like, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this is so common because I think of myself and like, even every time I start a new business, I'm like, oh shoot, like what do I need to do? So a lot of the people that listen to this show are authors or they want to be authors. They're writing books and they're growing a business. And some of the people that we work with are, they write the book and then they're starting the business on the back end. What do you recommend? Do you recommend a DBA, an LLC, or like, where do we even start to become like this legal entity?
Yeah. So there's three things. I call it the core three for small business owners. Every single business owner will have these three needs. Every business will have additional needs, but that's all different. But every business has the same three. That's your business entity, contracts, and intellectual property. Starting with the entity, you need an LLC. I don't care what anybody tells you. Do not stick with a sole proprietor or just a DBA. You can have a DBA that is owned by your LLC, but you absolutely need an LLC from the beginning. Even if you're like, well, I haven't made any money, guess what? You're still putting yourself at risk. You're still probably branding yourself, building buzz. You're probably still writing the book, even if you haven't made a dime. And that means you're still liable. You could still be liable for things even if you haven't made a dime. And so what the LLC does, it's a limited liability company, and it limits your personal liability from the debts of your company. So even if you're the sole owner of your company, this is where it can be tricky for people to wrap their heads around it. It's like, well, it's just me, like I'm the business, but you have to make sure that you are separate. If you're a sole proprietor, you and your business are one and the same. So if you accidentally do something in the business, you are personally being held responsible. So they can come after your personal assets, your house, your car, anything you own personally. That's why you want an LLC to separate the two, because if you accidentally do something in the business, they cannot come after you personally. The buck stops there with the business, with the LLC. So once you write the book, any intellectual property that's created, you want that to be owned by the LLC. Any contracts, all those contracts, you're not a party to that contract, not you as an individual. It is the LLC that is a party to the contract. And that is to make sure that you personally are never liable for anything in the business. And I don't want to get into taxes, but having the LLC, that's when you can get really fun and creative with taxes.
Yeah, I mean, this is so good. Like when I started, I was like, I'm doing the cheapest option possible, and it was just the DBA. But there was always that like thought in the back of my mind of like, if I get called out or if someone sues me, like it's everything I got. Now,
Yeah.
when I started, I didn't have much, right?
Yeah.
But what I've learned and partially from learning from you and listening and going to your events and seeing everything that you do is it's just so much easier. And
Mhm.
yes, it's a little bit more expensive to create an LLC than a DBA, but would you rather spend a little now to save a lot later? Or
Yes.
would you rather spend nothing now and get absolutely hosed when something happens, right?
Exactly. And one thing
Yeah.
I really quickly want to point out and paint the picture of is so many people here from whether it's their accountant or somebody on Facebook or somebody on TikTok, whatever, they're like, just wait until you're making this amount of money to file the LLC. Otherwise, it's not worth it. That is the worst advice and absolutely bad, bad legal advice. Typically, when you hear that from an accountant, they're talking about the tax perspective. They are not talking about your liability because let's say today is day one and you hear that advice. You're like, okay, I'm going to wait till I'm making $100,000 in the business. I'm just pulling that. I'm making that number up, whatever it is. So you're going to wait until you're making X number of dollars to file the LLC. Well, tomorrow, day two, you start making a lot of money. Let's say you blow up on TikTok and now you're making that dollar amount. And so day three comes along and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making this money. Let me go file the LLC. So you do. Great. Well, then day 100 comes along and God knows how much money you're making by now. And you get sued or you get the cease and desist letter. And you're like, well, this sucks, but at least I'm an LLC. So I'm not personally responsible. However, all that might be true in your head. This may be your train of thinking, but let's say for what is going on in the letter or the lawsuit, it's something that happened on day one or day two before you were an LLC. You do not get the LLC protection when the lawsuit happens,
Wow.
even though you're an LLC at the time of the lawsuit. So you never know what's going to happen. Like you're protecting against your ignorance now because you don't know everything. There's no way to know everything that you're doing wrong. And so it's just putting in a little bit of protection to take you a long way.
Yeah. And that's like 101, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're trying to start a business, like that should be one of the first things you think about because in order to be a legal entity, you're going to have to make that decision. Like
Mhm.
you can't start a business and be a legal entity without making that decision. So you've just simplified that for us very clear. Now, the next thing you mentioned, one of the three core things is contracts. Now, I'll be the first to admit, contracts to me, I'm like, this will do. I don't need this one. Like, are you sure? Like, people are good people. Now,
Yeah. They are until they aren't.
right. And I won't say that I have or have not been burned in certain situations yet. However, I want you to explain and articulate like why contracts are so critical and like how people can wrap their heads around it and understand like you don't need to spend a crazy amount of money getting certain contracts. Like there are templates, there are people that have done it. So like talk me
Yeah.
through what you should have a contract for when you're in your business.
So anytime money's changing hands or even anytime value is changing hands, because I know people barter, exchange things, and it's not to pull one over. And it's because so many people are like, oh, it's just, I know this person, it's a handshake deal or they're good people. But the thing is, number one, it provides clarity, absolute clarity. Number two, it shows professionalism because I tell people, look, if I'm going to start working with someone, and they don't send me a contract, I'm
Mm.
questioning, are they really a business owner or is this just a hobby they're trying out? And it's really a mindset shift because if you are in that hobby mindset, I get it. It may not be your full-time thing. However, I'm guessing the goal is for it to be your full-time thing. And you have to immediately start shifting your mindset to think, oh, I don't want somebody to think I'm pulling one over on them. It's shifting from that to I'm a business owner and this is how business owners operate.
One of the things that like I thought about with contracts, early on was it's going to cost me so much money to get these. And then there's going to be different ones for every different thing. And then I might as well like, I'm going to spend more money on contracts than I'm going to spend from the clients that are paying me, right? So where do we find these contracts? If we need a contract, let's say we write a book and we're going to get our first speaking gig. Or let's say we write a book and we do coaching, we start building coaching program. Like, how do we create contracts that don't like stress us out beyond belief?
I love this question. And this is the exact reason we created our contract vault. So the contractvault.com, you can get all the contract templates you need. They're also all included in our Legalpreneur membership. So when I had my law firm, I had people paying me for a custom contract, but they were brand new in business and they didn't know what they needed in the contract. So when I would take them through my process to put the specifics in there, they just ended up using my template anyway. And after, this happened for several months in a row. And I was like, I feel bad for wasting people's money. And it's like, okay, let me just start selling these templates. And that has by far just been a great peace of mind for a lot of the business community, because I even tell a lot of new business owners, if you're just getting started, you are perfectly fine getting started with template contracts, unless you know, hey, these are the specific things that I need in their contract. But because you don't have the experience yet, you just don't know. And you will learn, like, there's going to be so many mistakes that you make in business, and you're going to learn, like, okay, I have this template contract. And then something will happen. You're like, actually, I don't like this in my contract. Let me change it to this. And that's when you're going to graduate to a custom contract. But just getting started in business, you want contract templates. And our templates, they were all drafted by me, actually. And that was a fun project. But I drafted all of them based on my experience of working with thousands of business owners and recognizing, okay, these are the best practices and this is the best template for somebody just getting started. And then you'll learn as you go along in business. You'll learn what you like, what you don't like. And then I tell people to always keep note of what you want to change, what you want to update. And at some point you're gonna be like, okay, let me go actually work one-on-one with an attorney. And it's just gonna be a gradual progression in business. I don't like, our Legalpreneur membership is $349 a month. I don't believe anybody should be paying thousands and thousands of dollars a month just to have an attorney to go to. And all of our contract templates are included in that membership. And even then, past the membership, it's not going to cost you much more to get a custom contract or to get, the trademarks filed or anything else. But it's just a matter of implementing the protection as you go instead of waiting until there's an issue. Because if you wait, that's when the big price tags come.
Yeah, and look, I'll be the first to say we had a conversation about this. I get a letter in the mail or an email, and it's like, you use this picture without telling us or getting permission, and I'm like, is this spam, Andrew? This has got to be spam, right? Like you can't, and you're like, no, Jake, like you need to reply to this, you need to handle this, and I was like, my heart sunk a little bit because they were saying that I had done something from years ago. And it was someone from our team that had pulled this photo, and we just used it and it was fine. And just because I talked to you, luckily, just talking to you and having your expertise and learning what you teach in your programs and what's in the membership is like, I ended up having to pay half of what they were asking because of your advice. And so like, luckily they were able to do that, but they could have been firm and I could have been screwed. And so this is like these real life examples, fortunately it wasn't life changing for me in terms of like what I had to pay, but it was still significant, several $1,000s that like, I didn't even realize I would have possibly had to pay. And so I just wanted to share that because for everyone that's listening, like one, your shit, you've done it, you've worked with a lot of businesses, you're very good at it. But two, like this is why it pays to get out in front of these things. This is why it pays to make sure you're setting yourself up correctly. And so as we continue, I just want everyone who's listening to this to just think like, look, what are you doing now that might benefit from being a little bit more protected? Do you have the right entity? Do you have the contracts in place? And it's never going to be perfect. Like there's always going to be some other things, but Andrea is giving us the tips to set us up. So now I want to move on to the next thing. All right, Andrea, which is, look, we're writing a book. All right. we're writing a book. We come up with the idea. Is this considered our own intellectual property? And then I'm going to get into the good stuff of like, all right, here are the questions that people ask all the time.
Yeah. So it is not exactly straightforward with a book. I will say straight up, the title of your book actually cannot be protected with a trademark unless it is a series of books. And I get this all the time. Like, I'm writing this book, I want to trademark the name. And I'm like, actually, you can't. However, Legalpreneur, the title of my book, is protected with a trademark, but that's because it's our brand. So if it is your overall brand, then it is still protected with a trademark, just not specifically with books. So trademarks are filed with 45 different classes of goods and services. So the title of the book isn't protected with a trademark. However, all of the content inside of the book is protected with a copyright, and it's automatically protected with a copyright. So I don't know, the guy Dave Agus or David Agus, he was recently in the news I think he was with Simon and Schuster. He had a book deal and they had to pull all of his books because he plagiarized a lot of his content. And so you have to recognize what's the difference between protected content versus not protected, because ideas in and of themselves cannot be protected. So the fine line is, what's the difference of ideas versus actual protected content? And the definition is unique and original for copyrights. So if it is unique and original, it is protected with a copyright, and you automatically have federal copyright protection in the United States. Now, if you have, let's say you have your idea for your book and it's, I don't know why this came to my head, but how to lose a guy in 10 days. And you go through day by day for 10 days. And somebody wants to come along with how to lose a guy in 5 days. And that idea, how to lose a guy, even how to lose a guy in 5 or 10 days, that's not protected. That idea is not protected. However, if you copy blatantly either book, it's copyright infringement. Now the question comes, okay, if I do how to lose a guy in 10 days and I use the same 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10 in that order, is that infringement? What if it's every same step 1 through 10, but they're in a different order? And it's tricky. And I'm not going to give you the answer because I don't know the answer, but that's where it gets to be really the big gray area. It's like, okay, this is an idea, how to lose a guy in 10 days, how to lose a guy in 5 days. And it is copyright infringement. If I take that book and I go, recreate it and sell it on my own, that's copyright infringement. But if you take the same idea from each chapter, that's not infringement. And you putting it in your own words typically is not infringement. So it really is on a case-by-case basis. But I will say, by default, ideas are not protected. Further than that, though, it gets to be a lot more questionable. And I do get authors that do come to me and they're like, hey, here's my book. Is this infringement? And I will say it's really hard. And if you're going to go to an attorney and ask them to make that determination, without, like, if you want to be as efficient as possible for that, because that is an in-depth project, because they have to dissect your work and then the other work, you want to be able to specifically point to, hey, I actually got this idea from them. Here's the specific place I got it from. And then here's the specific place of my work. And you want to be able to point to like the specifics. That being said, if you can point to specifics and it's all the same, that could be infringement.
Yeah, some would say that would be an issue, right? Yeah. If you're like, hey, this is where I got it and it's exactly the same, you cannot do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there, I want to dig into this a little bit more, but is there a very simple definition for what is the difference between copywriting and what is the difference between trademarking?
Yep. So trademarks protect your branding, the identity of your brand name, your logo, your slogan, a product name, a podcast name, not a book name though. So anything that identifies your brand. Copyrights are your content. Any consistent content you're producing, your videos, blog posts, the books, For a podcast, the podcast name is protected with a trademark. Each episode is protected with a copyright.
Okay, so this is very interesting. So, for example, can a title, you mentioned a title can't be trademarked. Could a title have copyright?
No, because short quotes cannot be protected.
Okay, so this is a really important lesson. And this is why there's so many books that have similar titles. And that's why it's allowed, unless that title is their brand, like your book, Legalpreneur. That is trademarked because it's your brand, not because it's the title that you trademarked.
Exactly.
This is why you could name your book the Bible, because, or whatever, you can name your book anything that someone has already done, because you can't have that protection. Now, I wouldn't encourage you to name your book the Bible, but my point is that based on what you're saying. So when people are thinking about their books, okay, if you were to kind of give them like, if there was a way to give somebody like peace of mind, because I get people saying, well, Jake, like I'm nervous that if I write my book, I'm not going to be protected. Jake, I'm nervous if I write my book, like, do I need to get it trademarked? Like, what is that like? Is there an overarching like rule of thumb when it comes to writing books that you would just give people so they have a peace of mind of like, just write the book, you're going to be okay for the most part?
So the meanest piece of advice I can give is nobody's watching you. Nobody cares unless you already have notoriety. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, because I hear it all the time. I can't tell you how many emails I get every week. I have this huge business idea. I want to get started, but I don't want anybody to take it. And I go and look and they have no followers on anywhere. They don't have an audience. And I'm like, nobody's going to steal your shit. But I mean, if you have an audience, like that is a real fear. However, when you create content, it is automatically protected with a federal copyright the moment the work is created. If it's an idea in your head, it's not protected. But if you put it in a tangible medium, it is automatically protected. And to take it a step further, I would say once you can file the copyright for the book before your book is completed. I've actually never done that for a client, but I will say the moment you finish the book, you can get the registration. You can submit the registration as well. And the filing fee is $45. So, I mean, if you want an attorney to file for you, obviously there's going to be attorney fees involved. But if you want to figure it out yourself, the filing fee is $45.
Yeah.
So if you have the time and the energy to write a book, you can spend $45 to get a registration.
Okay. This is so good, because I feel like I get hit up this all the time of like, should I be copywriting? Should I be trademarking? Should I be doing all these terms that I don't even understand? Right? Like that's what people are asking. And I'm like, you've just heard this, right? And what now I can have this episode and just say, hey, go listen to Andrea talk about this, because now all of your questions have been answered. Mm-hmm. So now let's do something else additionally on top of this. Okay. You write the book. Okay. We now understand how that kind of operates. Now let's say you build a business on the back end of it. You get the contracts. Is there anything related to like, can your book be similar to your business? Can your book be like the same as your business? Because a lot of people like me, we use our book for the business. Mm-hmm. So is there anything that someone might need to know, or something that someone might want to protect themselves once they have the book done and they're now building the business on the back end of it?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to who owns the intellectual property. So who owns the copyright, who owns any of the assets. And depending on what the business looks like, depending on what the book sales look like, which we know book sales aren't much, it's the book that gets us the speaking gigs, the coaching, the money on the back end. And so that's where you honestly, like, this is not a big legalpreneur plug, but I mean, it is. That's when you really do want to get an attorney involved to help you structure everything the right way, because it ultimately comes down to risk. How much risk do you want to tolerate with one business entity? Because at the end of the day, if your book's brought in a couple $100, and your speaking and coaching is bringing in, a few $1,000s, it may not be worth it to have two different LLCs. It's probably worth it just to have one, even if you are making hundreds of thousands of dollars for both of those. However, if you're somebody like Jake, you have multiple books and you're doing a lot of speaking, but then you're teaching people how to do this, you probably do want to separate that out. And because it's two different, I mean, it's similar audiences, but it is different. It is two different businesses. Yeah. And so it ultimately comes down to, what are you specifically doing in business? where do you plan to go in business? Because we can talk about, oh, if this is what you're doing right now, then we should do this, this, this. And then you're like, but actually next month I'm going to start this whole new business and just leave everything behind. And it's like, okay, well, you should have led with that. And then we can have a whole new business plan. But ultimately it just comes down to what is your risk and where are you going in business?
Come on. Come on, Andrea. This is so good. Okay, we're on the tail end here, but I just got to keep the questions coming, okay? Because we write the book, we build the business, we start getting clients. And I hope you're starting to see, like, we're going through the whole process here of how this all comes together and why you need this stuff at every single point. You write the book, build the business, start bringing in clientele, you start getting money. Now you have people that have signed the contracts that created, either they got them from the Legalpreneur membership, the contract vault, or they got it from one of their own attorneys. And now somebody is not making their payments. We see this a lot in the service industry. We see this a lot in the coaching consulting. People sign the contracts. Maybe they make one payment, maybe make two. And then the tail end of their payment plan, they're like, nah, I don't think I'm going to pay anymore. What do you recommend doing? And this is like a double whammy question. What do you recommend doing? And is it worth it to get attorney involved? Or do you just kind of say, oh, well, like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I love this question because I literally just had a phone call with a legalpreneur client this morning, or I interviewed her for the podcast, and she literally said the biggest flex is just being able to tell people, like, I'm going to have to, get my attorney involved. And she actually means it. She's like, hey, my attorney CC'd here. And so it ultimately, it depends on how much money's involved, how far do you want to take this? But what I teach people is to take them through your own process of trying to recover the payment. And when you are in the Legalpreneur membership, we do allow clients to CC their attorney, because ultimately when somebody says, hey, I'm going to have to get my attorney involved, they're bluffing. Like nobody, like very few,
prove it. Prove it.
Very few business owners actually have an attorney on retainer. And whenever our clients have somebody tell them that, I'm like, well, just CC me and be like, hey, you can have them contact my attorney who's CC'd here. And then that usually just like does away with it. They never hear from them again. But you want to go through your own process of trying to recoup payment. Because of course it's like, hey, I know this was probably a mistake. Maybe your card expired, whatever, but we need you to update payment. Go through 2 to 3 emails there. And if you still don't hear from them, give another email that's, hey, if we don't have payment by this date, or we don't hear from you on this date. And ultimately you want to have compassion, and because people go through hardships, we're all just trying to make it, and let them know, like, hey, we're really open to working this out, but I haven't heard from you. Like, let's work out a payment plan, like a further payment plan, because at this point you just want to get whatever you can. So you go through these steps. And then if you still don't hear from them, then that's when I tell people, look, tell them, hey, you have until this date, or we will be bringing in our attorney to take the next steps, and basically let them know, hey, the attorney is CC'd here. And that usually gets like a 99% response rate, at least some kind of response. And then depending on how much money we're talking, if you have a signed agreement, basically almost every single state in the United States, if you sue somebody that didn't make payments, didn't finish paying on their contract, and it's a signed agreement, you can sue and get what's called treble damages, which means triple the damages plus attorney fees. So if it's a $5,000 balance, initially you think that's not worth it, but getting 3 times that plus they have to pay your attorney fees, now that makes it worth it. However, by telling them these steps, that's typically a big bargaining chip. It's like, hey, we're just trying to recover this amount. If we have to take it a step further and sue you in small claims court or whatever court, like, you're going to have to pay this. And they're like, shit, like, okay, fine. Like, let me figure this out. But at the same time, let me just clarify that. At the same time, like I said, have compassion. Like, I know a lot of people want to like make up stories, but when somebody's authentic and when somebody's just like trying to pull something out of their ass.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, because I do think, or at least you hope that the people that aren't able to make the payment is because of something that has happened,
Mhm.
right? Not just like, oh, you know what? I'm just not going to stay true to my word. I'm just done paying this person.
Mhm.
You hope like, not that you hope something bad happens to them, but you hope that there's a reason why they're maybe delayed. And that's why I love how you reach out to them a few times, slowly increase the importance and slowly increase like the ramifications. But like, let's say it's $1,000, because people also get like really nitpicky when it comes to this
Mhm.
question too. Like, if it's like $1,000 and your business can afford not collecting that thousand, is it sometimes worth it to just part ways and just stop communication and be done
Yeah.
rather than trying to keep investing time into that, keep bringing in your
Your
attorney?
energy,
Or
yeah. It's
yeah,
all
like
about protecting your energy as well. Like if you're a multi-million-dollar business and somebody owes you $1,000, like, are you really worried about that $1,000?
yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting because I think like people like I think this is really helpful because sometimes you don't know how to navigate it.
Mhm.
And like even like with like I'll give an example here. Like if a cop pulls me over or something, like I don't know what I can and can't do, and I don't want to get into more trouble,
Yeah.
right? And so I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes regardless of what side you are on in this situation that we're talking about with like owing payment or collecting, it's like sometimes you don't know, and so you panic and then it escalates everything, or it just like you crater and everybody's energy shattered.
Mhm.
And so I like the way you've made this so simple. I think you make it so easy. And so I'd love to ask you like, how do we follow you? How do we sign up for the membership? Where do we get the contract vault? Like, just tell us where to get everything, like all the goods.
Yeah, so you can follow along on social media. I love TikTok at the Legalpreneur on TikTok and Instagram. My personal Instagram is at Andrea Sager Law. You can get the membership or the contract vault or an LLC filing at thelegalpreneur.com. The Legalpreneur membership actually comes with one LLC filing, all the contract templates, all access to your own attorney, unlimited emails, a phone call every month, document review, you get a business audit, trademark search, literally everything you need. And we do monthly trainings, which by the way, April's training. So March's training was how to create a certification and not leave thousands of dollars on the table, because that's what I've seen from a lot of our clients. That's what we talked about this month. And then April, our training is about default payments. And we're giving our exact step-by-step template emails for how to recoup those payments and then the exact steps you want to take, and just more about compassion, because what I've learned in my own transformation as a human being is like, legally, yes, they may owe you $1,000, but energetically, is it worth your time? Is it worth your energy? And so at that point, it may be better to cut ties, but you still want to do everything you can and everything you still feel good about doing energetically.
Yeah, I love it. What a way to finish it up. So we'll have that all linked in the show notes. And for all of you that have listened to this episode, if you have panicked or thought the legal side of business is scary, it ain't scary no more. The boogeyman is out of the closet. Okay, folks. But check out Andrea. Check out the TikTok.
Oh,
Check out the Legalpreneur. Check out the Contract Vault. I mean, just go check it out. Go buy
the
the book,
book.
The Legalpreneur. Yeah, I love that. Just
I'm
hold
the
it up.
worst promoting my book. I always forget to talk about the book. But yes, I love the book. It's great.
But this is what's really cool. Okay, and we're gonna wrap up right here, and that's this, you guys. Everything that we just talked about is talked about in Andrea's book,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe we got in some extra examples, some different things, but a lot of the stuff that you were able to talk about comes from the book. The questions come from the book, the ideas come from the book, the knowledge of how skilled you are comes from the book. So if you want, go buy the book, go sign up for the workshop, go join the membership, buy the contract vault, like just do the thing. And if you enjoyed this episode, let Andrea know, because we're always looking to help you guys out, bring on great guests. And so Andrea, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. And for everybody else, you know what to do. We appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one.